It's the e-commerce master plan podcast. Here to help you solve your marketing problems and grow your e-commerce business. Cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and advice from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello, welcome to this episode of the e-commerce master plan podcast. I'm Chloe, the creator and host of this award-winning show, and it's my aim in every episode to help you find ways to improve your e-commerce business. So thank you for tuning in. And I'd love to know how the show helps you. So you can do that via social media. So we're on both Twitter and Instagram. And there, if you just post about the show and use the hashtag #EcomMasterPlan, so ECOM Masterplan, then I'll get back to you and we'll grab that and we'll retweet it and all the rest of that good stuff. So yeah, it'd be lovely to know what you think. Some of you have been letting me know what you think of the show via the Apple Podcast rate and review system. So a big thank you to all of you. We've had quite a flurry of these reviews in recently. So last week I shared a review from Canada because we had a Canadian guest on. This week I'm going to share a review from the US because we've got a guest from the US, in fact from New York, on the show today. In today's episode, I'm talking with someone who balances the desire to sell via their own website with quite a luxury product against the sales that you can achieve via Amazon FBA. So there's a lot of content about both. We talk everything from influencers to Amazon FBA to product creation and selection, identifying your target markets. There's lots of good strategic advice here and quite a bit of tactical too. Before we get into that though, please do check out the sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Klaviyo, the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for email and SMS messaging. Whether you're launching your e-commerce business or taking your brand to the next level, Klaviyo gives you the tools to get growing faster. That's why it's trusted by over 38,000 e-commerce brands. Build your contact list, send emails that pop, and create marketing moments that build valuable customer relationships over any distance. Get started for free today. Visit klaviyo.com/masterplan to create your free account. That's klaviyo.com/masterplan. This episode is brought to you by NS8. If you run an online business, you probably deal with chargebacks and fraud. Last year alone, businesses like yours lost billions of dollars because of order fraud, and that number is still climbing. NS8 is a comprehensive fraud prevention solution that combines behavioural analytics, real-time scoring and global monitoring to protect your storefront from fraud. They do all this and seamlessly integrate with your store without the need for coding. Start protecting your business with a free 30-day trial of NS8. Go to info.ns8.com/masterplan today. That's info.ns8.com/masterplan. And now to introduce today's special guest. Kevin Urrutia is the founder at Chester Travels, a DTC suitcase brand. They launched in 2017 and in 2019 did $1.5 million in revenue. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Chloe. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm interested to find out how you got to 1.5 million in what I would think is a very crowded space in just 2 years. But before we get into that, how did you get into e-commerce in the first place?
So I got started in e-commerce. So back growing up, I guess, I wanted to do my own startup and then do my own business. So after college, I went to San Francisco to do basically work for a tech startup, and I was working there at Mint.com. And the reason why I went to California was because when I was growing up, I was reading all the articles I was reading, like TechCrunch, for example, was a good blog back then. And everybody was moving to California. And I figured I wanted to do something with startups and tech. And, basically I wanted to go with all the entrepreneurs where people were saying, oh, you got to go to California. Anyways, I was there for about 4 years. I was working at Mint.com. I then went to work for another startup, which is great. It sort of reinvigorated what I wanted to do, which is a startup in my own company. So I was there for a bit, but then eventually I moved back to New York because that's where I'm from. And then I started in e-commerce after my first business, which is a cleaning company. But then I really saw this craze of FBA, Amazon FBA, really starting up. Everybody was doing it. I was listening to these podcasts. I figured, hey, I could do this too because I already have my first business that's kind of running, and I was wanting to look for something new. So then I was talking to Wilson, and he was actually also doing e-commerce as well. So when he was doing e-commerce, we started thinking about a product to do, and he helped me launch my first e-commerce business, which was doing Montum at that time, and that's a hiking company. So we were running that for a little bit, and that gave me like a great insight into e-commerce. So when I was doing that, we did like almost everything from product sourcing to shipping to finding 3PLs to like figuring out how to import product from China to US, figuring out how to sell. We were doing like retail shows. We were going out to like outdoor gear events to pitch our product. We were doing blog reviews, YouTube reviews, kind of like that's really like my first intro to e-commerce. And it was like literally from not knowing anything about it to building it yourself. And I always tell people like, that's like, I really liked it. And I thought it was interesting that you could sell a product. Considering the reason why I liked it is because my first company was very like service-based. So like you only got paid when you did the service. Whereas product and e-commerce was like, you can have one person selling thousands of products at a time, and it doesn't really cost you that much more money. So that's kind of why we wanted to do e-commerce. And then that led us to then starting Chester, which is what we're talking about today, our second e-commerce company. And that really came out of kind of like we were talking about before. FBA was great, but what was happening about the FBA and sort of that market was that it's very competitive because our product was about 30 to 40 bucks. And the cost of entry was really low. So there's so many competitors. Like basically after a year or so, the top 10 for like, let's say trekking poles was everybody doing the same thing we were doing. It doesn't cost too much money to get started. So we still want to do e-commerce, but we're saying, okay, we made some money. What's another product that we can sell that has a high barrier to entry that we know that people won't just do as to just sort of test? Because with e-commerce now, you kind of see like, it's the price point war. It's like, if you're a really low product, it's a price point war. So that's why we wanted to do Chester. We're like, okay, what is our advantage? Okay, cool. Let's think about, we have some money. Let's do something that's custom and completely new. And at that time, we saw all these luggage companies be coming up and people talking about, oh, luggage. And we're just like, I mean, like similar to how I think about, like, I always tell people like, oh, like, how did you do trekking poles or hiking poles? How did you do cleaning company? I just said like, I'm not really a cleaner. I'm not really too much of a hiker. I hike, but like, I thought, well, hey, there's opportunity there. I want to do it. Like, I've always wanted to start my own business. And I always tell people like, oh, like, you got to follow your passion with what you're doing. I'm like, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think my passion is starting a business and growing a company. It doesn't need to be that specific thing. Whereas like you look at the top companies, like, like say Uber, right? Travis, the CEO, he was never a taxi driver. Like, but he runs the biggest taxi driving company in the world, right? And I think people sometimes get confused because obviously if you have passion and you love it, you might like it more. But for me, my passion is starting a business and growing a company and then seeing that grow. That gets me excited. And whatever that is, it's like, it could be an industry that I think makes sense. And I always tell people like, at least for me, for e-commerce is a great example. I always look at, are people actually buying this product? What's the search volume on Google? What's the search volume online? Because it shows that there's demand and there's competition. If it's a completely new thing, then you're going to have to educate the market. And that's in itself really expensive to do. So you get a lot of money. But anyways, that's kind of how we got into Chester, because we saw the market. We're like, there's not that many competitors out there. No one's really talking about luggages because it's pretty expensive to make once you sort of figure it out. And then with the luggages, we wanted to do something that was unique and custom. So we spent about 6 to 7 months just designing the first prototype for the carry-on luggage. And that's like a long story into Chester.
Wow. Well, we're going to come back to lots of questions about what you've just been telling us in a second, but I just want to cover off the key facts, I guess they are, about Chester before we go any further. So where in the world is Chester based and where are you selling to? Yeah,
so we're based all in New York City. Right now I'm in Brooklyn, but our main headquarters is in New York City, and we sell everywhere. When I say everywhere, we mainly sell USA. We're trying to sell to like Canada too, but we can do Canada from our website. But if we're selling like on Amazon, it's just purely right now USA. But through our website, we can sell anywhere. It's just that the shipping is really expensive. So sometimes we tell people like it's not really worth it. It's that luggage is pretty big to ship. And then if we sell like outside the US, you gotta pay all these importation fees. So we're looking to get warehouses in like other countries, but we're so young right now that we just don't have it yet.
There's probably quite a bit of growth capacity still in the US before needing to worry about that complexity, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, like if you look up like the volume for luggages or like carry-on luggages, it's like massive. It's just like crazy. Even for us, we were actually surprised about how many we could sell. we're just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, yeah.
And you mentioned that you're selling on FBA and your own website. Anywhere else?
Really, those are the two main channels. We do like our website is through WooCommerce, so we have like a custom WooCommerce website that we design. We do Amazon, but this year we're also going to be starting doing more retail as well. Retail is something that we've experienced with the other company, Montum, so we kind of know how that's like. And I tell people like, people always ask me like, oh, what's retail like? And for us, it's like literally just making a list on Excel of like all the stores and just saying, hey, you want to come and buy my product? I'm going to show you an order, a sample, and then check it out. And then if you want to buy, you get a PO.
So when you say retail, we're not talking about you opening your store. We're talking about you wholesaling to other retailers.
Yeah, wholesaling to other like local travel stores or local like retail stores. Yeah.
And certainly, if it's anything like the UK, it's kind of like luggage seems to be one of the sectors where you still get a lot of unique stores, one-off stores selling it. So it's not like you've got to try and fight your way into a nationwide chain. You can just go to each of the specialists.
Yeah, there's like even here, like in Chinatown, there's like so many luggage stores. We're just like, it's crazy. Like, because I tell people like, luggage, people buy so much luggage. It's like a really crazy industry about how much luggage people just buy and then every year they're buying new luggages, which is wild. But yeah, like we see that too. Like we'll go down the store and we're just like, I can't believe this is a store full of luggages. Like even if you go to like an airport, it's like you see Samsonite and Tumi. They're just like literally luggages. Yeah.
I never understand why there's luggage being sold airside.
That's so interesting too. I always think about it too. I'm like, you're literally in an airport, like you're about to travel. How would you buy a luggage? Like,
yeah, it's like you've already checked in what you're going to check in. How much more luggage do you need at this point?
And that's the thing I'm always like interested too. Like, but it's one of those things like you probably know. It's definitely like just branding. It's like it's worth say, hey, you're traveling. Let's associate our luggage with traveling every time. So.
You mentioned it's a WooCommerce site. So are there any particular widgets or plugins you're using with that, which you'd like to recommend?
So for WooCommerce, what we're doing is basically we have a standard WordPress theme. Not a WordPress theme, sorry. Our WordPress theme is custom. We had to design with a company out here in Brooklyn. We're using the WooCommerce plugins for that. And then we're also using MailChimp is a really big one for us, which is the email marketing and just sort of pop-ups and reminders. We love to use that for people. Another plugin we're using is called Automate Woo. I think Automate Woo is now part of WooCommerce, but Automate Woo is that sort of email capability of, hey, did your order get refunded? Did your order get returned? Your order got shipped? Or like, hey, did you forget to check out with a discount code? Those are the plugins that we're using. Those are the core plugins that we're using. And then sometimes we'll be using like another big plugin that I love using for all the companies that I work on is Talk. Have you heard of like Talk.to? It's like a live.
Oh, as in TAWK? Yeah, the live chat function.
Yeah, I love the live chat. I tell people all the time, like, you should be definitely, I talk to a lot of founders and they're like, oh, I don't want live chat. I don't want to talk to people. I'm just like, that's a great way to know what the problem is with your site or even with like your product or what questions you're having. Of course, it's like, I understand, like, yes, it's annoying. Like, trust me, like, yeah, people ask like random ass questions, but like, it's a great plugin and I love it. Yeah.
What does your team look like? What are you doing in-house for Chester and what are you outsourcing?
Yeah, so for Chester, everything we're doing, so our team for Chester is 3 people. The only thing that we outsource, I guess, is obviously the manufacturing of the product, but then we work with another 3PL company to import that into the US and get to our warehouse. But then everything else from marketing to design to running the business is all in-house. So basically and again, we also help talk to our factories and suppliers about shipments and sort of what colors we're going to make. That's a really big thing that we focus on is colors and sizes, but then everything else is in-house. Yep. So we try to run like pretty lean internally because we're just like a new company and like we have a lot of experience from just like running our previous e-commerce company that we know like sometimes like you don't really need to do too much during the day when stuff is kind of up and running.
And we should really talk about the product. So you mentioned that you'd had all this FBA experience at the $30, $40 price mark, and it was like, right, the waters are too crowded here. Let's go find our blue ocean. And for you, that was a category which I would have thought was fairly well populated and hard to enter, which I guess, as you said, it was high barrier to entry. And you've really gone in at the high end. So what made you decide to go after the $200, $300 luggage market?
So we wanted to go to that market because we obviously it's like to make a luggage is pretty expensive, and we just couldn't. For us, we were looking at the numbers, the cogs, like we just couldn't figure out how to make it cheaper, and that's the biggest thing. It's just like it was really expensive to make one luggage, and we could of course cut costs on like some of the materials, but we wanted like a specific type of luggage and shell. Our shell is custom made, our interiors are custom. Our zippers are from like YKK zippers, which is like they make like the most popular zippers. If you look at like on top of a luggage, they make a C, so that's all custom. So we really wanted, we didn't want to go. What I was talking about before was fighting with like a low end product, because that would be a race to the bottom. We really want to say, hey, look, we're making a quality product and it's going to cost money. So we really made a good conscious decision to say like we want to be price pretty premium, because we know that we're spending a lot of time making it and we don't want this to just eventually just keep lowering our price.
And I'm guessing that going into a much higher price point market, you did a little bit more customer research than you did with going when you started Montem and you were just selling $30 hiking items?
Well, I mean, we were just looking at the search volume. Like I'm like really big into like SEO and sort of looking at like the search volume and keyword volume. That's like one of the things that we always look for any product that we're thinking about. I saw kind of what you were saying before, was like there was like really low price points that you would see, like you go to any store, like $40-$50 luggages. Even for that, I'm like, whoa, how are they making money? And like you look at the luggages, they're like really ugly and designed poorly. But then you would have like your other spectrum, which is like Samsonite and Tumi, which a piece of luggage would be like $1,000. And we're like, and then we're just like, wow, like this is crazy. Like how are they charging $1,000 when it doesn't really cost that much to make? So then we're like, okay, let's go to a price point where we think people will be happy with. So now the 200 plus to like 400 plus price range. And that's kind of really what we thought about it, was like, hey, if we introduce a product that is a medium tier with a good quality, we think we can dominate from the bottom, from people that don't want like a cheap luggage, because cheap luggage is people know that they get ruined in 1 or 2 years. And also they're not willing to pay for a Samsonite or Tumi yet because they don't have that much cash yet. So that's really where our mentality was. Product market research was just us just thinking about it and saying, okay, cool, let's go do that.
I love your honesty on that front. And it's, when one goes to your website, it's clear that you are a kind of an image first brand. It's about the quality, it's about the finish. So that, I think probably to many of the listeners, will slightly jar with having FBA as a key channel. So did you ever think, well, this is going to be a fairly luxury product, so how does it fit on the Amazon platform?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah, so basically we categorize ourselves as a luxury item too, even for Amazon. So, and the thing is, I think this is why I think for us that helped really well was a lot of these luxury brands such as Tumi or Samsonite aren't on Amazon, but people are looking for them because Amazon, at least in the US, is such a like almost, I mean, I don't know what the stat is right now, but almost 50% of sales come from Amazon. So for us, we say we want to use that as an advantage, saying like if these luxury brands aren't on Amazon, but we know based on search volume, people are looking for them, we want to appear for that. So obviously, I tell people like doing your keyword research and your backing keywords, add in some competitors that you know people are looking for, and you'll show up. So then they'll be like, oh wow, what's Chester? Like it looks almost as good as this high-end brand. I want to buy their product. So you have to like look at your advantage on that, because if people are looking for it on Amazon and you're not there, someone else is going to buy it. So we want to be on there too.
I guess when you said initially about there being a high barrier to entry, I guess you were kind of looking for a product category that isn't being shouted by every FBA expert out there. Because it's a big industry, isn't it? FBA advice and starting up in FBA. And I don't think there's anyone out there suggesting you go after a luxury luggage item.
No, exactly. That's the thing. It's like, hey, luggage is a great product. And everything that you just said are why it's a good thing to do on Amazon. Like all these big companies aren't on Amazon because they're just like, oh no, we're too good for Amazon. We're luxury. But then you're realizing that we want to capture people. There's people in that market that want to buy a product that's good like ours, high quality, good, and they don't want to buy a Samsonite or Tumi, for example.
Yeah, so it works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you mentioned about what colors you're going to make. Does the colors, do you have to keep that up with the trends and what's, literally walking down the catwalk?
Yeah, the colors. I mean, like the colors is probably the number one thing that people love for the luggages. Like the pink one is probably one of our best sellers. Like the pink, that like light pink one, the blue one, people love that one too. And then our black one are our best sellers. But for trends, we kind of just look at, it's similar to what we just look at. We're like, oh, what's a cool like startup color that people are talking about now that we want to do, and then we'll get samples and make it. So, or people just ask us like, hey, do you have this color? Or hey, do you have this like teal? And we're just like, oh, cool, we don't have it yet. But like making new colors is like, we would love to make tons of colors. We will request it, but like to get a minimum PO, it's like really expensive. So we're just like, okay, like we'll have to wait. So we just released, even just in the last year, we were selling the carry-on luggage. We just released the other two sizes, and that was like almost 2 years after we started, because we just didn't have the cash to fund those new molds. And so that's why.
Gosh, so for the first 2 years, it was just the one size.
Just the one size, yeah. And then we just came with the big ones, because people kept saying like, oh, so it's like one of those things where we didn't do it because we didn't have the cash, but then it's also because customers were saying like, hey, I want a set. And now sets are like a big thing. It's like, it's what people talk about in e-commerce, like increasing your AOV. It's like, okay, cool. Like now you're going to buy a $500 item versus like a $200 item, which is great for us. So, and then the great thing about the luggages too, is when you ship them, we tell our suppliers just like stack them inside the big one, inside the medium one, inside the small one. So it's like one box now. Yeah.
So you can literally get 3 items over for the container space of one.
Exactly. Yeah. So like it's like some cost savings there too, which is great for us too.
Yeah, because it's a big item, isn't it, to have to shuffle through the postal system or to get over from China too.
Yeah, we always have to do ship. You can't do it through like air freight. Air freight would also be way too expensive, and like for like very little items. So we have to plan our inventory really well.
Yeah, which is a challenge. And the more colors and the more sizes you've got, the bigger the challenge becomes.
That's why like sometimes we're thinking about like, hey, let's only make some of our best selling colors for the time being, because we know those always sell. And then those are the ones we'll send out to like influencers to promote.
And you mentioned influencers, because that's what I was going to get onto next. Is obviously you've got the sales coming through the FBA, but for your own site, what are you doing to drive sales of luggage? Because as we've discussed, it's a high price point luxury item. So bidding on luggage on Google Ads is highly unlikely to be the way to success.
Yeah, no, it's way too expensive. I mean, you probably know what I mean. Like if it's too expensive, I'm not doing it. Like
yeah.
Yeah. So our background is like in SEO. So for Chester, we do a lot of SEO. Right now in Chester, we're getting about 70 to 80K organic visitors a month. And we were just basically thinking about what's a good keyword strategy. It's similar to what we were talking about before is how do we get people to just even recognize or even know our brand in a way? And then we think about SEO is there's so much traffic around SEO. Like, for example, some of the keywords that we think about are ranking for right now are like best flight tracker. People are looking for flight tracker apps. Let's say you're Delta Airlines. So when you're looking to fly through Delta Airlines, a common keyword or search term is, what are the sizes of Delta Airlines luggage bags? So then we write literally like our content is like airline name times luggage size. And like we just have tons and tons. Yeah. It's like tons of content there. Yeah. And then we interlink. And of course, we tell people like in the top, we say, hey, the recommended luggage is Chester. So then we promote them, then we send them back to our product pages. So we do that. That helps with like organic traffic, SEO. And then we'll also do influencer too for like Instagram. And then, so influencer, it's interesting because I think about it as 2 ways. It's obviously the Instagram that people think about right now, but also think about it as the YouTubers that we work with too. So with influencers, what we do is in the beginning, when we first started Chester, we literally just message people on Instagram saying, hey, we would love for you to test out our product and we'll send you a free luggage. And I tell people like with influencer, we've had really good success with Chester. And the reason why I think it is, and it's my thinking is a luggage is that if people, I always tell people we have a good luggage. So definitely check it out. But if they really like the luggage, they'll use it every time on their trip because these influencers love traveling. So then they'll keep posting more content of the luggage too because they're constantly using it. Versus, let's say, for example, you're selling a protein powder. They'll post it once. They're never going to use it again. So your like longevity of the content or the product to that influencer is short-lived. Where for us, if they like it, they'll keep using it and keep tagging it. And that's why it's worth it.
Well, yeah, it's like the protein shake. They may show pictures of your protein shake again, but it's probably the shake in the NutriBullet canister with no packaging anywhere near. Whereas, as almost the stock repetitive image of the travel Instagrammer is, it's me and my suitcase going somewhere else. It's me and my suitcase again, because they need that we are actively traveling, we're actively doing stuff thing. So genius.
Yeah, and that's why I think it works so well. We're like, oh, how are you getting these influencers to give so much content? I'm like, first of all, it's a good product. Obviously, number one thing I always tell people, like, you got to have a good product, and then it needs to make sense with the influencers. Like, these travelers are traveling all the world around. They need a luggage, so they always bring it with them, and we like that. Another big thing for us, influencer wise, is we partner with a lot of like YouTubers and bloggers to review our luggage. So depending on the product, I always talk to founders. Depending on the product that you have or the item that you have, the number one thing I always tell people is like, your product name, the second most searched, let's go back to Google. I always think about Google and how people think about it. It's going to be, the first search term is going to be your product name. The second one is going to be your product name reviews. So you need to work with these influencers and bloggers to make sure that you have enough reviews. That way people trust your brand and trust your product. So I always tell people, like, what is your go-to market strategy? It's how do you send your product to people that are going to post online reviews? That when a new customer searches for your brand name reviews, they're going to see the reviews that you worked with that shows that you're actually a good brand and a good product. I always tell people, like, you want to control your narrative online. So you need to be up there and work with these influencers first, unless you want a customer to be angry, pissed off, and write you a negative review. And that's the first one that shows up.
I like it, that two-pronged strategy there. So whilst many people would just say the whole thing is influencer marketing, you've got very clear aims with each one. With the Instagrammers, it's about giving them the product so they just love it and carry on posting it all the time. But then with the kind of the more content influencers, it's the get the review. So so you get the bump from being on their site, but you're also getting that SEO validity too.
SEO, and also just like, especially with a product like Chester, which is like $200 plus, like, people are not going to buy on a whim. They're going to do research. So you need to make sure that your content on the web affirms that you're a good product. And for us here, like, we never leave it to chance. We're actively reaching out to people saying, like, hey, we think you should review our product because we think you would love it. And then it's about, like, it's all strategy. It's not like, I tell people, like, marketing or just running a business is like, it's never a chance. It's like you actually have to think about what's going on with the consumer too.
E-commerce Master Plan is supported by some of the greatest companies in the e-commerce sector. Here's a reminder of who they are.
It's safe to say that most of us have been doing more shopping online lately. And if you're an e-commerce brand, that means you might be seeing more first-time customers. But once they've made that first purchase, how do you keep them coming back? Well, that's what Klaviyo is for. Klaviyo is the ultimate email and SMS marketing platform for e-commerce brands. It gives you the tools to build your contact list, send memorable emails, automate key messages, and more. Way, way more. Whether you're launching a new business or taking your brand to the next level, Klaviyo can help you get growing faster. And it's free to get started. Visit klaviyo.com/masterplan to create your free account. That's klaviyo.com/masterplan. With NS8's platform, you can monitor shopping activities in your store, keep track of customer behaviour, and get scores that let you know if an order is safe to process or if it's most likely fraud. NS8 takes out the guesswork so you can focus on your business. For a limited time, e-commerce Masterplan podcast listeners can try NS8 free for 30 days. To claim your offer, go to info.ns8.com/masterplan. Again, that's info.ns8.com/masterplan. NS8, fight fraud with intelligence.
It's time for the top tips round.
Okay, I love this section because it gives me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our businesses to the next level. So Kevin, you ready for the top tips?
Yes.
Okay, the book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, which book would you recommend?
So the book I would recommend, I'm not sure, have you heard of like The Wolf of Wall Street?
Yes.
Movie? So he actually has a really good book. It's called The Way of the Wolf. It basically teaches you how to sell and how to influence and influence other people into believing what you have to say, or sort of and how you're going to sell your product or items. I think it's a really good book of just psychology and selling The movie is good too, but like the book is actually like one of the best books I've ever read. Like my friend told me about it like last year, and he's like, "You should read this book." And I was like, oh, "Okay, fine." And I was like, "Oh well, this is actually a good book." He gives you like really great lines to use when you're like, even like for us, when I'm selling, I mean like for us, we're doing a lot of retail sales like over the phone. So it's a really good strategy on how to sell them to believe your product, especially when they can't see it. And it gives you tips and tactics to sort of keep that conversation going. So I think he does a really good job there in the book.
Okay, cool. And then the traffic top tip. Which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
I love SEO. I think SEO is probably the best traffic source or the best way to drive growth to a business. It takes time, of course, but I think once you sort of start getting the traffic, your brand name search volume just keeps getting higher and higher. And for me, I love paid because I do paid stuff as well, but I still think SEO is a great way. And I think most business owners, if they don't realize, it just takes time. Like for Chester, we're talking about like our traffic that took about 2 years to get to there, right? And now we're reaping the benefits of it. But for the first 2 years, we're just like pumping links into content writers. So I think people realize that SEO is a really great traffic source.
Okay, and the tool top tip, maybe a collaboration tool, a social media plugin, a phone app, or just a way of working. Is there a cool little tool you use that makes you and your team more efficient from day to day?
I mean, the best app I think is probably Slack. Of course, everybody says Slack, but the reason why I like Slack is more for the integration it has of like all the notifications. So for Chester, we integrate with like the Slack WooCommerce plugin where, hey, every time you get a new order, we get a notification and that feels good. So it's a good, cool new order. And then we can check the customer and we're like, okay, cool. Like they bought like a set. We're like, oh my God, another set. So it's exciting.
I love how many of the e-commerce world are addicted to updates every time they sell something.
It's like, oh my God. It's still so exciting because like I tell people it's so weird when like someone buys something you make and it's like I was like actually random tip. I was like at the airport once and I saw someone with Chester and I was just like, oh, that's so cool. Like wow, like someone actually has our product. And I went to the one thing about this, I was like, hey, like that's my company, and they're just like, okay, cool. I was like, oh man, I was so excited, but you weren't too excited.
I still have a desire to be on a train one day or somewhere and either see someone reading one of my books, which has become ever harder to do now. Everyone reads on their phone or on a Kindle, but one day maybe.
One day, yeah, I know what you're saying. Even for like, so we have a podcast too, and people email us, and that feels good. It's like, oh wow, someone's actually listening.
Yeah. You can see all the stats. Is like when someone actually emails.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we actually get an email. Like we just got one today, like on Facebook. Someone's like, hey, you had a really good episode last week. And I was like, oh, I feel good. And I showed my team. I was like, oh, it's good. Yeah.
Okay, then the growth top tip. If you met someone today who's focused on growing their e-commerce business from 100 orders per month to 1,000, what would be your number one tip for them?
I would say the number one tip for someone like that is to really focus on, does your product have product market fit? And the way I think about product market fit is look to see if people are actually buying this product. And I always tell people like, look at Keyword Planner, look at Google. That's going to help you sell your first item. If you're selling a product that no one's heard about, of course, everyone wants to be unique, but I think that's much harder to do than going after an industry that you know there's actually competition, because that means there's actually buyers. And that doesn't mean to say like don't make something unique. I think you just need to be prepared for that uniqueness with cash and experience, unless you can actually go like raise funding. But for me, I'm all bootstrap, so I always go for the products or items that I know there's volume, because that's going to help me enter the competition the market more easily.
Excellent advice. Well, Kevin, before we say goodbye, could you let listeners know where they can find you and your business on the web and social media, please?
Yeah. So like I said, my name is Kevin Urrutia. I'm on Twitter. It's just twitter.com/itsdanest, ITSDANEST. And then you can just check us out at chestertravels.com or email me, kevin@chestertravels.com. That's where you can find me.
Nice and easy. Well, look, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing so much about the journey of the creation of Chester Travels and your philosophies. It's been really interesting. So thanks for being on the show today.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
So you have it, a luxury brand selling both via their own website and via Amazon FBA, and for all the right reasons, I think, listening to Kevin there. Lots of good advice from him, especially I thought around the that influencer piece and how he goes about picking his markets and picking how he's gonna run the business. Fascinating to chat to him. Now look, to get your hands on the show notes from today's show, including the top tips, links and details of related episodes, then do head over to ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast, where you will find a link to this show and all those details. Thank you for tuning in to this and every episode of the E-commerce Master Plan podcast. If you liked this episode, then make sure you check out episode 275, where Shannon Fitzsimmons from Oh So Curly talks about her micro-influencer marketing campaigns, which I think fits really nicely with the influencer marketing tips Kevin shared in this episode. Kevin's traffic top tip was all about SEO, so here's another recommendation for you. If you want to get your ears around some of the latest SEO tactics, then make sure you're subscribed to my brand new podcast. It's called Keep Optimizing, and you want to be subscribed to that because episodes 6 to 10 are going to be all about SEO. They're going live in August, so search for Keep Optimizing on your podcast app and subscribe so you get them as soon as they go live. Back here on this show, as you know, I bring you a new interview every week, and I do that because I want to inspire and help as many e-commerce business owners as possible to succeed and thrive with their business. So please do tell the other e-commerce business owners you know all about the E-commerce Master Plan podcast, because I'd love to help them too. I hope you have a great week. Keep optimizing.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Master Plan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast.